It's always a possibility if things don't turn in one direction or another that Jaylen could walk or could start looking for the
Could
door.
demand a trade.
This is not something that's odd. It's not something that's out of left field. It is something that we've been worried about for a year and a half with this team, that if they don't figure out a way to right the ship, you're going to be entering this offseason with Jaylen Brown, and then the next year on is his walk year. And you're running up.
That's how quickly it's been. Yep.
That's how fast it goes. If you don't trade him this offseason, the clock is ticking. You pretty much have until the following trade deadline to do it, or else you're stuck with him in a walk year and he has no value anymore because no one's going to take him for just a 1-year rental without any certainty that he returns. So you've got some problems here. You either got to make everybody happy, and it's always been about making Brown and Tatum happy, making them believe everything is going in the right direction. So if you're Jaylen Brown, Sherrod, and you're sitting here and you're thinking, okay, let's see some improvements, and they start doing things like trading Schroeder and Richardson, what's that going to say to you?
Well, if you're Jaylen Brown, I think it depends on couple things. First, are you being kept in the loop on what they're doing before it's done? Because to me, when you're Jalen's at that point where he shouldn't be flipping over, his phone to find out the Celtics are making a trade. That should be a conversation that he knows about well in advance. And if that's not happening, you're opening the Pandora's box to him walking, because players, aside from being empowered, they want to be in the know. And the Celtics, to me, when you look around, Jaylen and Jason are the only ones who should be on a no basis. Everyone else, it's need to maybe know. They need to know. So Jaylen, I'm not as worried
knocking
about
on the door. Let me in.
Right. I'm not that worried about
What's going on?
bouncing. I'm not. I think Jaylen is going to be here for a long time. Because I don't think the Celtics are at a point, and I don't think they will get to a point where they feel that he wants to leave. He's going to make that clear to them. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't.
See, I don't think it's something that the Celtics are thinking about right now, but I think it is definitely a possibility. I mean, when I first read the report, I was like, well, yeah, duh. I mean, a first-round exit. I mean, I'm sure there will be talks about it. Maybe not from Jaylen per se of requesting a trade, but it's going to be in his mind a bit. Not that he – listen, Jaylen is putting together another great season, right? And I feel like we say this every single year. Like, he continues to improve. And if this team doesn't get out of the first round and fail, like, that's a failed season, right? And this is something we talked about before the start of the season. That this season was so important to make everyone a believer, right? For a number of reasons, right? New head coach, Tatum and Brown are the new leaders of this team. There's no question about that. There's a lot of different things that could happen, that could transpire. But if you're Jaylen and you're entering a contract here, and let's say halfway through the season we have another 500 club, what's going to prevent Jaylen from saying, well, maybe I need to lead the ship elsewhere, or maybe I need to find a better situation, that I can actually do that. Now, I don't think Jalen's the kind of guy without one in mind is going to go out there, pick up the phone and say, look, guys, I want out of here. But things change in the NBA quickly. We know that every 2 or 3 years, there's a new super team, a new super duo out there. And who's to say that Jaylen won't want to be part of something like that? I don't know, 9 or 10 months from now, midway through next season. So I think Celtics fans have to keep things realistic and remember the fact that, it will be a contract year and that these things can happen really quickly. We've seen it in the past. We saw a team in the, Oklahoma City Thunder, the very next season split ways, and that team got to the NBA Finals. I mean, this could definitely happen. But again, when I first saw the report, it was one of those like, yeah, obviously that can happen, but it's a big could.
What was your reaction to me?
My reaction was obviously. I mean, and I've said this all season. We'll know a lot about this team at the end of this season. I think a lot of people will have made a decision on whether or not they want to stick with Tatum and Brown leading this team, or if one of them has to go. I don't think anyone wants to see both of them go, but there's going to be a lot of questions answered at the end of this season. And a lot of that has to do with what Josue just said. Yeah, I mean, if they're a first-round exit, then yeah, there's a good chance that Brown's like, you know what? This isn't working. And if it's a first-round exit with Brown standing in the corner, much like he did the last playoff series, or the previous one, I should say, because he was hurt the last one, then yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, and honestly, what's the surprise? Because you now have like 3 seasons with these guys, underwhelming, if that's the word you want to use. If they do come up short, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I think me and John both had the Celtics as a fringe playoff team to start the year, and everyone here said they weren't even a playoff team until Schroeder came on board. So really, I mean, I think they're kind of right around expectations, to be completely honest right now. My question is, does Jaylen Brown want to be in Boston? It's the same question I have for Jason Tatum. There's been so many examples of just being like, do these guys really like it here? Do they like playing with each other? Do they like Boston? Do they like the organization? So those are the things that I want answered. And if I don't have obvious yeses to those answers, then of course I can see a situation where Brown would be like, you know what? He might leak something might leak out that he's interested
But
in
why? That's my question. So this is where I'm trying to wrap my mind around. Like a story like this has to come from Jaylen's camp because I can't see an advantage to it coming from the Celtics. Why would so to me, it has to be someone close to Jaylen who's talking about him not being 1,000%.
Unless it's someone in the Celtics who's worried about it.
Why put that out there? Why create an environment? Why, if you're worried about it, why would you want to create an environment where people are talking about trading Jaylen Brown and then he gets annoyed about it? To me,
you might want to send a signal higher up.
I don't know. To me, this is coming from Jaylen's camp, and if so, I'm curious what the motivation is. To light a fire? To what? I'm not sure.
I can't figure it out either.
Sharon,
I'm not sold on it necessarily coming from Jalen's camp because think about this.
I agree.
If Jaylen, if you're getting some vibe that maybe he's thinking like this, don't you want to know what his value is without asking teams for his value? This is the kind of stuff that will get you phone calls that, even though you didn't request those phone calls, you're going to get them now. People are going to say, hey, I saw this about Jaylen. What are you guys looking for? Now, all of a sudden, you have a conversation that you did not initiate, but if you put it out there, you sort of kind of did initiate. So I'm not convinced. And there's another wild card factor in all of this that we haven't really talked about. I'll be very candid with you. I don't know how this will play out, but the agent that represents Jaylen Brown also represents Al Horford, also represents Marcus Smart, also represented Joe Johnson when he's here. So I just ran down like damn near half of their rotation
Gloosh.
under one umbrella. Yeah, Jason Gloosh, and who's a great guy. I mean, I love Jason. He's really a good. Sam Hauser is another one of his guys, the shooter. So that's why I'm not sold on that necessarily coming from Jalen's camp, because I mean his camp is well stocked with folks who are all under the same umbrella. So I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense. So that's why there's a lot of murkiness with all this. There's no clear direction where this is coming from. But the bottom line is this: Jaylen is going to have some tough decisions to make this offseason as far as what he wants to do with his future, whether he wants to double down and try to get this thing done with Tatum, or whether he wants to branch out and be, kind of that alpha. But I can tell you right now, though, when you look around the NBA, there's no one-man show anymore. You can't get it done by yourself. You're going to need somebody who can be a significant difference maker with you, and even having one guy like that may not be enough.
This is all about the deadline, and it asserts what I've been saying is that this is a critical deadline for this team. You got to start to establish some direction here, even if this doesn't completely dictate where you're going to go in the offseason. You got to kind of set the table here, and somebody, whether it's Brown's camp or whether it's someone inside the Celtics, wants to see a shakeup here more than what seemed to be in the fold before.
It's always possible it's a Celtics trial balloon to see how the fans react, and I understand that as well. Which is, hey, if you put it out there, let's see which way the wind is blowing. If the world isn't that pissed off about it,
report,
maybe that gives us a green light. So it's always possible. It just seems like a weird one. That's all.
Well, remember the note from that report that there was a thought that Brad might make more substantial change last offseason, and he went the conservative route. I do think there's a little bit of a divided thinking in this front office, not only on Smart, but on overall, like what they're doing here. Whether it comes to clearing out rookie spots for rookies. We've read a report about that coming from the heavy publication Bulpett over the last week or so here. So you hear different things about what this team should do. I think there's kind of mixed thoughts on, what direction they should take this in here. And it's all about Brad here, right? Because all we've heard from Brad is that they're only going to make a move if it gets them closer to a championship. I still wonder if Brad's taking on this mindset of, we're waiting for the big one. We're keeping all these chips on the table, much like Ainge did. And he, of course, learned from Ainge that the needle moving moves are the ones that are going to get you there. I completely disagree because I think you're so far away from contending. You have to start to do things now to improve yourself.
Another issue we have here is if this Brown stuff, if there is some truth to it, if there's some, where there's smoke, there's fire type situation, how do you even go about approaching the draft or approaching free agency if you're talking about, one of your two best guys potentially not even being on the roster next season? How do you even approach players that you're targeting and things of that nature? And you're going to go into the next season just freestyling it again with, whoever you can get for Jaylen Brown because he asked for a trade? Plug and play again? I mean, this is shaping up to be another disaster offseason.
The way you're approaching it shouldn't have changed because you're 2 years away from. And honestly, this report I don't think should be a big shock to anyone because of the fact that he's 2 years away from free agency. That's when guys usually start to make some inclination about their future. They start to think about it a little more. It becomes a problem that the team starts to think about. Are they going to sign another contract? Are you going to push right to the deadline?
But the front office needs to have a handle on it. And I don't know. I don't really have any reason to have confidence in them, at least at this point yet. So,
well, here's the thing. This deadline, you have to do everything you can to improve this team. And there are numerous guys out there that if you get aggressive enough can come help this team right now, make them a lot more competitive and stable, especially in that third wing spot or the first guy off the bench. And this offseason, if Brown does take a look at the situation and say, all right, I kind of want my own thing here, which I think is probably going to be a big driving factor for him at some point because he's an all-star. He's a guy who has full confidence in his abilities. He's a guy that I know for a fact thinks that he could lead a team if he had to. And he has done it here when Tatum's been out. So that's a driving factor with him, I think, as much as the team and the situation here. So if he decides this offseason, I want out, that sort of clears things up for you, Jimmy. You make a big trade for him now. The return would be substantial, and you build around Tatum. It's better that he does it now than in free agency 2024 and leaves you high and dry.
And that's the reason.
All right, Shaughnessy, but you don't have to do this right now.
But
that's not ideal.
But that's the reason why you won't be held hostage by it. You still have a ton of leverage this offseason if you were to trade him because he's coveted, which means you would get a legitimate return and you could shop and you could, do something that's not going to destroy your team if you had to.
And you can keep Tatum long term.
But that's also why I would not build for now. I would still, any trade I make now is for future considerations, not to make this current team more competitive. And if that involves deals,
well, you still don't want to lose Jaylen. You still want to kind of.
I'm saying
none of this is ideal. Right?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying deals right now. The motivation of them should be for what's going to make you better in a year or 2 years, not this year. You don't want to tank completely, but you're.
I agree with that.
You're looking for cap flexibility. You're looking for bringing in players who you actually would consider wanting long term, and that again is what are you willing to pay for? Could you bring in? I know, like Keith at Celtics blog floated something where they might get
two
Powell.
Really good ideas today.
Powell would be outstanding, even though he's locked up till 25 or so. And you think they don't want to take on any extra contracts? The one thing they have going for them right now is they only have 4 guys under contract past 23, and that gives them some sort of flexibility. And it feels like that's something they're trying to maintain. Stay under the tax. Don't add any extra things. Have some room to play with once you get there. But if you could bring in a guy who's a good piece that you can, continue to build with and would be a solid part of your rotation, you would do that. Otherwise, I would go for assets. I would go for picks. I would go for whatever. I don't care if you're trading Richardson here, if this team's going to be a fraction worse. If you're able to get rid of him, get rid of Al, get rid of things that are going to get you under the tax, that are going to get money off the books for next year. Imagine Al and Richardson both off the books next year. All of a sudden now you've got some money to play with.
Doing dances.
But I mean, now you've got money to play with, so then you can do other things. I would be looking at those types of deals, not stuff that's little band-aids that's going to make you maybe a fraction better this year. I just don't think that's that important.
I think that's at the top of the list, though, right, John? That has to be at the top of the list. Like at least trying to see what's out there for those guys and trying to pull off one of those deals that obviously the tax apron, but at the same time gives you a guy that you can, obviously whoever this guy coming in from the trade, you can consolidate those guys and hopefully it's a piece that you can lean on for the future. But I don't know how much talent those guys would attract at this point,
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. You're gonna have to float some picks here. In those deals that Keith wrote about, especially, I think you'd have to include some pick compensation
That's what I
to do
think.
that. And I
I
don't
think
know
he's
why you
missing.
wouldn't.
He's missing picks in those deals, but they're good. They're good ideas. I just think you'll end up having to dump picks to get
And that's
players of that
perfectly
caliber.
fine to
Right.
me. You know, like you are overdue on trading picks to improve this team, to solidify the edges of it. Because Fournier last year, I'll still go back to that. Good move, gave them a boost. He just wasn't a sustainable piece because he was a free agent and he ended up getting paid a ton. If you can find another guy like that who can reliably hit shots off the ball movement Brown, Tatum, and Smart are creating right now, you're going to be in a much better spot as a team now and in the future. So those two guys he pointed out, Norman Powell, Harrison Barnes, who we've talked about forever, who would just be great next to the Jays. Get aggressive with them. You know, like these are guys, they're not going to make you a championship team right now, but they're going to make you a much better team throughout your rotations. You can run some better bench units. Your closing lineup's going to look much better with those kind of guys, and they're signed for multiple years, like you talked about, John. That's the key. So that probably makes Brown feel much better about the situation, like having a guy who's not going to brick the shots that they create while they're being double teamed in the lane.
Yeah.
They've been overdue on a move like that, and I just don't know why you hold on to your picks when those picks aren't going to impact your team until 2-3 years from now.
You're here because you failed to pick, and you have to start getting it right because you cannot survive in this league without drafting and developing. You can't do it. And if you're trading picks, it has
just like
to
the
be
Suns.
the picks to me, Bobby. Here's where they get thrown away. They get thrown away in deals for like if you're the Bucks, you
have a lot of picks.
But no, if you're the Bucks, you can throw away a first-round pick on a PJ Tucker because you think you need him to win a championship.
Right.
There, it's worth it. If you're the Celtics, you don't throw away a pick on that caliber
It's
player.
not throwing them away.
It is
You're
to
getting
get
good stuff back.
No. This is why I disagree with it. You're a team like the Celtics. You're getting only fractionally better, and you're not getting any closer to contending, and you're killing yourself for the future in terms of either hitting a home run with a pick or having an asset you can roll up into a bigger deal later. You do not give away picks to just get a guy who's a little bit better than the guy you have.
If that Powell deal is on the table and they want to pick,
I'd have to think about that one more closely. But again, I'm really,
John?
I'm so done with the drafts and the development.
Even for someone like Powell,
Bobby, you can't be done with the drafts and development. That's that is absolutely
the luckiness
essential to franchise building.
Don't you dare let Austin Ainge hear you say that, bro.
It's the area they're lacking, and it's the reason they're here. Without this, you're doomed, man. You have to draft and develop.
Well,
you have to.
I think it's too late for that.
Unless you sell it for 3 stars, unless you sell your soul like the Nets for Harden, that's fine. Not sell your soul, sell your future.
Brooklyn sold their soul.
They did.
They did.
Unless you do that and develop, it's the only way it works, guys.
But do you have enough time for it, John? You have 2 years now with Brown. This is the window. This is the clock that's ticking that we're talking about.
What John's talking about is more like the mid to back end of the draft, right, John? I mean, we're not talking about tank for a top 6 pick.
Oh, and you have to get lucky too at that spot.
Or try to get those picks that landed you Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to begin with. Like, I don't think you're talking about that.
There are 7 guys currently on the sophomore team at the All-Star game that the Celtics could have drafted. Okay, any that are better than the 3 they did.
And you feel good about them going back and going in that direction?
I'm saying is there's 7 guys there that they could have drafted with their 3 picks. They busted 2 and they gave away 1. If they had 3 of those guys on the sophomore roster right now, this would be a very good team to be excited about.
Would those guys be
future.
Playing and be panning out here? That's the key question.
This is why they are where they are. If you give them all away, you better strike gold. If you're giving them away for a veteran that's a little bit better than Josh Richardson, that's questionable. You know, I called him Josh.
That's not even a question that you know. Here's what I will also say. If the
you said Jason
office,
earlier, but I didn't say nothing. You said Jason earlier.
If the Celtics front office thinks they are 1 or 2 guys away, then they would consider trading those picks. It's not a Kevin Garnett situation. Exactly, which is why they haven't. It's not a Kevin Garnett situation.
But Jimmy, what if Brown comes out this offseason and says all they did was dump Schroeder and we lost round 1? I'm out of here. That's what you're trying to prevent. And the cost is a pick or 2. Oh, it's a no-brainer to me.
Brown should understand the situation, just like the rest of the team or they should all be on the same page.
This is why I love what Brown did here. If this was his camp, putting some pressure on them. Enough with the picks and the drafts and this and that and slow building and these, make a move, erase a move, all this stagnancy as a front office. Let's see you back up Brown and Tatum. You want to build around
players. They've had guys. They've all left.
There are people confused about what we mean about draft and develop. Yes, you drafted Jaylen and Jason, and now they're veterans that you're paying $30 and $40 million to. You have to keep drafting good players, guys.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just do it once and stop. When they get to the point that you have to pay them a lot of money, you need other people that you don't pay a lot of money.
So let's talk about Brooklyn. So
yeah, but I feel like the Celtics thought that they drafted at least like 2 or 3 rotation guys, and we've talked about it so many times between Romeo, Neesmith,
they thought
Pritchard,
so,
and Grant.
Yeah.
And Grant, they got 1. And Grant is, he's just now getting there. So I think at the end of the day, their approach was what sort of did them in, and obviously just picking the wrong guys, at least in 2 of those drafts.
So let's talk about the Nets, because they obviously trade all their future picks to go in on Harden. They stack the deck. They give themselves a chance to win a title last year, and I think still this year. But not only do they do that, they just find some ways to finagle their way into the first round. They pick up some undrafted guys. They pick some guys in the second round. They don't have picks, but they figure out ways to bring some young guys in. And all of a sudden, you look at their team this year, and it's Cam Thomas, who looks outstanding, better than any of the Celtics young guys. Daron Sharp, who looks great. David Duke, all these different young guys that they've just kind of pulled from places. You don't need first round picks to strike gold. You find some guys in the second round. You find some undrafted guys who can help you if you have the stars. And the Celtics have the stars. The hardest part is done. You have Brown and you have Tatum. Now you have to surround them with some veterans like the Nets have done with their stars, bring in some young guys.
They're getting
from
guys
anywhere.
who want to play there.
So, yeah, you got to become that. You got to become an enviable destination. And you can't just be rolling Romeo and Neesmith out there hoping that they give you something. You got to bring in some reliable veterans who can help this team now.
Sherrod, let me ask you.
Guys become the same way that the Nets are. You don't have
Sherrod,
Durant.
it's a week away. What are you doing? Are you trying to improve a little, or taking whatever you can get, like basically having a fire sale and saying, I got 4 untouchable, not 4 untouchable. Obviously you would trade Marcus or Rob.
Smart's available. And
you
Rob,
would trade
in some
up
cases
with those guys. But I'm saying, would you sell everything else if people were like, yeah, sure, I'll give you some future stuff and we'll call it a day?
If you can get stuff for that back end portion of your roster, the guys who are in what we would call the 9, 10, 11, 12 zone, you move them.
But you're not trading Richardson, Schroeder, and those guys?
Schroeder, I would absolutely
that.
do that in a heartbeat.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Richardson,
for a bag of balls, right?
Richardson,
it's going to be a dump.
Literally dump. That's a very appropriate term to use.
I don't think that's...
Sherrod, what about Richardson?
He's got an extra year.
That would be a tough one. But I would do it. I think for the right pieces, I would do that. I would do it begrudgingly, but I would definitely do it if it makes sense. I mean, if someone's willing to give you like a first round pick, even if it's a conditional one for him, then you absolutely do that, because you're not going to get that kind of value for him down the road. So,
I don't know. I don't know why we get so excited talking about trading Brown and the possibilities there when you won't trade.
Who's excited about that?
Who said
well, that's where we're headed. Everyone's always excited to have that conversation. Well, they're going to be going there fast if they don't make moves in other places to try to improve this.
I was going to say, when did Sherrod say that? I was like,
I do not believe the trade where you're going to give somebody on the back end of your bench for somebody that's
you're going to get nothing.
I'm saying, I don't believe any minor trade they make now with the idea that they're going to stay under the tax, but they want to see if they can improve a little, is going to be like, yep, Jaylen, I'm staying. I don't think that's going to be it. Like,
this deadline could dictate it.
I don't know.
If it's true.
I don't think it's that deep, Bobby. Because this is the thing that I'm discovering and realizing with the NBA. You really can go from frankly the bottom of the barrel to the top of the mountaintop with just one deal. That's why this whole idea that you only have 2 years. 2 years is a lot. You can significantly transform your roster in 2 years to the point where you have look at the damn Phoenix Suns. They sucked until they got Chris Paul, and then all of a sudden, Chris Paul was playing well. Devin Booker was always amazing. And then you get Bridges, and then you get Jalen Smith. You start going down the line. All of a sudden, one player could be the domino that changes all your fortunes. But you've got to find that player. That's the challenge that Brad Stevens has.
He is my
Finding
worry.
I feel like Danny was waiting for that player, right, Sherrod? I feel like or at least he got it, and then every time he had to go on to plan
He's
C and
another
plan B,
one. He held on to those picks.
He ran out of options, in my opinion.
I mean,
But,
he flipped he flipped Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder for Kyrie Irving. Great deal. You sign Gordon Hayward through free agency. You get Al Horford, closer to his prime than he is right now. I mean, you look at the last 4 or 5 years, and you look at the players they had. They had multiple opportunities to put together rosters that compete, but shit happens. I mean, guys get hurt.
Right.
Guys don't want to be here anymore. I mean, you can't control that stuff. All you can do is try to get the talent in your tent, and then you can work with that. And that's the challenge Brad has. He's got to get talent.
And to your point, Sherrod, also real quick, Bob, I just want to get this in. I don't think, to your point, I don't think Jalen is really looking at the 7th, 8th, 9th spot, being like, we need to get some guys at the end of that bench. No, I think he's thinking, look, I got this, And I think him and Tatum are sort of in that mindset right now. And of course, Marcus Smart, and they're obviously the way he's been playing. Everyone is sort of more in tune with the core of this team. How are we going to get out of this hole? So I think right now, I don't think Jalen's going to be pissed if this team does nothing, because he's thinking we're that difference maker, right? We're the ones that are going to carry this team into a deep playoff run, not some stranger coming in here and trying to fix that.
And that's what I would watch with Brown. He is immensely confident. When you hear people say, "Oh, Tatum,"
especially right now,
he's very certain to put himself in the same conversation as Tatum, and deservedly so. I don't think he's that much of a worse player than Tatum. His potential, at least, he can be every bit as good as him in the right situation. So does he look at it and say, I want to lead my own team eventually? That's what I'm looking for there.
Whatever.
You might be right, Josue. It might not be about the surrounding cast. It might just be about what they're capable of as individuals there and figuring out together. And Brown eventually saying, let's go do my own thing here.
We're not even sure
at
that's
least not this year.
We're not even sure that's a bad thing. Honestly, you don't know. And if it comes
it's
to that,
a bad thing if it's too late, though. And that's the issue with waiting.
If it comes to that, it comes to that. I mean, we've talked, you guys mentioned it here, and it's a good point. He could be less about bringing in more people and more about give me the friggin' ball, this could be an opportunity situation. He might not like a crowd. It certainly didn't work well when there was, Hayward didn't like it, we've seen this team with too many mouths to feed it not go in the right direction. Tatum and Brown don't seem like guys who can share the ball.
Let's be clear. We've seen very successful NBA stars who have won championships together look at it and say, all right, I'm ready to do my own thing here. Kyrie in particular, Shaq, blah, 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 down the line. For two guys who are immensely talented and aren't even close to a championship right now.
That's fine, but
it gets there.
Let's be real. There's not a team out there that's trading for Jaylen Brown as their alpha. Everyone is bringing him in to be a complimentary star somewhere else. So his situation's not going to change. If he wants to go somewhere else and be the man, he's going to go somewhere else and at best be the 1A, which is what he is now. I don't think his situation's going to improve in terms of look at me, everybody built around me. He's not James Harden.
His potential.
He's not James Harden. He's not going to be one of those guys that someone's like, I got to give They're not. He's in that second tier, and that's.
You don't think so?
No, come on.
No,
he's not James.
You're watching the same game, right?
He's not James Harden.
This guy can.
He's not going to be an all-star this year.
Bobby, he's a guy who's going to be brought in to play a great player. To play alongside another star.
Yeah, it depends where he's going.
Yeah. Right.
What if he goes to Sacramento? He's the face of that team.
Sherrod doesn't.
But they suck. They would
Sherrod's
suck.
holding his head now, Bobby.
They would
look
suck.
What you've done.
This is the thing about Jalen. Bobby, you are right. Jalen is a very good player, but that doesn't make you a damn alpha. Jalen is right at that Mendoza line between being really, really, really good player, really, really truthfully being a complimentary guy. And that's nothing wrong with that. He's a 20-point per game compliment. He's a number 2 on a really good team. I absolutely believe that. Absolutely believe that. And I love the fact that he has the confidence to believe that you may think I'm a number 2, but I'm going to put up number 1 numbers. Love that about him. But at the end of the day, if he has to carry a team by himself or he has to be the front and center guy, I think over time, I just don't think he's that type of player. And that's no disrespect to him because he's a hell of a player. I just don't think that's who he is.
Depends if he gets better or not. And I still think there's potential to grow for him.
This is the first year he has not gotten better, which is a bummer. Every year, not only has he gotten better, in many years he's made 2 leaps during the year.
Yeah.
The year's not over, John.
Which is crazy. This is the 1 year where he's actually regressed some, which is the first time it's happened. And you can give a lot of passes, no offseason because of the surgery. He's had COVID like 11 times. You know.
So here's the timing thing.
Mac COVID.
No, but I mean, so there's reasons why, but this is the first year where you're like the handle and the turnovers is a regression. He went backwards, which is weird. And the shooting
was another bad turnover.
There's another bad one.
5 first half turnovers.
7 turnovers again. That matches his career high. That's a big issue.
Which he had 3 games ago. So he's had 7 twice in the last 4 games.
And he had in that Orlando game too, the 50-pointer.
This is the one year where he's definitely taken a bit of a step back, both in his shooting percentage, his efficiency, and his sloppiness. He's really, I mean, and he was sloppy last year. His usage it's about the same, but I mean, 2.8, 2.7, the turnovers, but you can see that handle is loose right now.
So you've talked about this, John, that parlaying a Brown trade into building around Tatum being key, because what worries me about the clock of this team when we talk about 2 years, it's a long time, yes, but if you do push it to the deadline before his free agency and you end up losing him for very little or nothing, that could directly lead to losing Tatum too.
Oh, that's a disaster. You have to. This is why, again, this report is not crazy. Whether Brown wants to go or not, the Celtics have to look at themselves in the mirror, assess their 2 stars, and say, we're going to plow forward with these guys, and I'm confident we can build around them and keep them, or I'm really worried that this isn't going to work out and I need to make a move now. And I'm going to move Tatum because I got an extra year. I'm going to move Brown because I got an extra year to show Tatum that this is the right place to be. And that just might be forced upon them, whether they want to do it or not. It might be a reality that they just arrive at. And that's that. And then you have to figure out how are you going to get better if that's the case. Or they might just say, forget about it. We're going with these guys or bust because we'll never get better if we make the move. And then they just ride it out as far as they can and hope he doesn't leave. That's obviously not great. But a lot of teams do that. You play to win. You put as much around them as possible,
star, John.
And then you always have that hook where you can pay them more than anybody else, and you hope that that's reason enough to keep them. It sometimes is. Sometimes
you cannot lose him for
a lot of teams do that though, so they got to make a choice.
But they don't have those teams don't have Tatum. Usually you have one star, and that happens, and then you're done when the guy's gone.
I'm not saying one is right or the other, Bobby. I'm just saying they probably have to decide in the summer
very soon. Yeah. I think this
which
summer,
path they're going.
This is why the report's not crazy to me. I know everyone's saying fake news and conjecture and all these things. Just look at the timeline. Once you pass up on moving him next summer, you're all of a sudden in his contract year. So.
Well, we've kind of been saying that on the show all year.
We've been saying it, but it's starting to get real, because they've been mediocre. You have a little report out there. You're not really sure. You've seen it not work at times. It's working a little bit better now, but it's just becoming more real as you get closer to it. That's all.